What's going on, everyone? Today we've got a ton of new cards to talk about. There were so many drops, a brand new leader, a brand new rare base, which is always exciting, especially since we have Target Town, ECL, Security Complex, and all the other interesting options rotating out, or a few of them at least. So we're going to dive right in. A huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon, and let's get started. Starting off with Double Cross, 6-cost command event. Choose a friendly non-leader unit and an enemy non-leader unit. Exchange control of those two units. The player who takes control of the lower cost unit creates credit tokens equal to the difference between those units' cost. So this is a very interesting one. Obviously non-leader, which is totally expected since no one can really take control of another person's leader. Just wait until that's in the game, guys. That's going to be incredible. The interesting thing about it is it's kind of a worse choose sides in a lot of cases, which is kind of unfortunate. Now, choose sides is rotating out back in set 2. This one's one cheaper than choose sides, but the typical usage of these types of cards is you've got a cheap unit, they've got an expensive unit, you swap. Pretty straightforward. You've got like a battle trade token or a spy token or whatever it is, and you get their 7 drop. That's how choose sides typically work. And that's incredible. You have a 7 resource play that not only gives you a 7 drop, but removes their 7 drop. Very, very high value, assuming you've got a cheap unit to exchange. It's a very strong card in those select scenarios. This one is very risky, to be honest. If you are the one with the cheaper cost unit and you exchange control with your opponent's big unit, they're suddenly getting a ton of credit tokens. Like, in the spy and maul case, for example, that's 7 credit tokens. They could basically just play a 7 drop again if they played a 7 drop that turn. So it's a little bit of an interesting card in that it can be useful, but I don't think it's as powerful as potentially early options for the purposes that you were trying to use it for in that scenario, like swapping units to get the value. However, there are some other cool things you can do with it. Like, there are some units that if you spend purely using credit tokens, you can get some innate advantages. If you're a leader that purely uses credit tokens or has advantages with credit tokens, maybe that gives you an advantage. Or maybe there's just some crazy unit you wanted to play that costs like 14, like an Endless Legions type card that wins the game. And you play this, you ramp like 6 or 7 tokens, and then next turn you just drop your whatever it is. That could be pretty cool too. So there's some little versatility in here that I think is pretty cool, but very, very interesting downside to the card, or upside if you want to turn it into that. Then we've got 2-cost ground unit, Black Sun Kabbalist. It's a villainy 1/3, and when played, you give an experience token to another friendly Underworld unit. You know, I normally like these types of cards. These sort of just a little bit of value, decent, body coming down, cheap unit. Just gives you a little bit of extra power on the board to this unit, from this unit, and from another unit. It's a go wide type of strategy. A 1/3, though, is a little bit weak. If this was a 2-cost 2/3 with the when played, I think that would be interesting. A 1/3 is a little bit weaker. However, if there's a good Underworld, baseline for the Black Sun Kabbalist to build off of, you could have something there. Going like a little bit of a go wide, high value units, putting like, maybe a 2/4 down, giving an experience tokens a 3/5. That's kind of difficult to deal with in the earlier turns. It is a 2-cost unit in of itself, and it's a 1/3, which doesn't give a ton of power in of itself. But I could see this being decent. In the case where, maybe we have some more support for go wide and specifically Underworld strategies, but it is a little bit on the weaker end, so I'm not terribly excited for it. Like I said, I could see this being decent. But as we move on, there are some more Underworld support cards, which does kind of affirm the value of Black Sun Kabbalist. It's 3-cost ground unit Katana. It's a command card, 2/4 Underworld vehicle speeder, and when played and on attack, the next Underworld unit you play this phase costs 1 less. So this is definitely a unit for 2 reasons. I mean, one, you've got the option to really ramp out something incredible. Like if you do go with your Jabba style deck, or maybe you're playing an Underworld Lando deck and you generated a few credit tokens, boom, 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 you play this down. Next turn, you can potentially ramp like 2 or 3 because you got the trigger from this, and then you've got credit token, and that can do some really cool things. It's also, since it's a 2/4, it's a little bit weaker in terms of stat line, but you could also just play this and potentially play another card afterwards. Like, again, affirming that go wide Underworld game plan. It's a little bit interesting because, you know, we do see some of these cheap cards that support that strategy. You can kind of have that mix of like, I have a go wide Underworld deck, but then because I'm generating these like little credit tokens here, little credit tokens there, I can stop at my leader deploy for resources and then just use credit tokens to play 8-9 drops. Maybe that's some game plan that you want to go with. In Katana, I can see doing some work in that style of deck. I will say we've seen cards like this that, you know, reduce the costs on when played and on attack, and they haven't been that great. Now, the other one that we have that I've tried a lot, especially in like Han 2, was the resistance one. I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but the resistance one that makes all the resistance cards cheaper. And there's not a whole lot of resistance cards in the first place, whereas Underworld's a much more common trait. So maybe this will be more interesting. Next up, we've got the Axe Forgets, a 2-cost event in Cunning. Return a non-leader unit that costs 3 or less to its owner's hand. This is actually interesting. So obviously we have like Beguile, which is like the new Waylay, right? You can just return basically any units for the most part in a lot of those cases. However, this is more akin to the 2-cost version that we have. And I forget off the top of my head because it's really only a sideboard card in most cases. I'm like peeking to see if I can scroll through some of the cards here to see if I can find the name of it. But that one was really strong in those select scenarios. Clear the field, that's what it is. Got it. I was trying to look for it, but then I come and I'm like, clear the field. That one is 3 or less as well. Now you also get to return all the ones that have the same name. So this one is definitely weaker, but it is no longer heroism. So again, maybe a sideboard option. Very cheap version of the bounce effect can be useful, especially if we do have some, you know, tempo-based strategies. So nothing too crazy. We've seen a card just like this before. It was just better because it was in heroism as well. So a little bit less restrictive, but a little bit less good. Next up, we've got a really impressive one. Jyn Erso, 2-cost ground unit in Command, Cunning, Heroism. She's a 2/2 rebel, and when played, you either give an experience token to a unit or exhaust a unit. So in its worst case scenario, it is a battlefield marine. Just straight up, Jyn Erso is a unique battlefield marine. Obviously, she's just a named character. It's a 3/3 rebel because you can give the experience token to herself. So already, this is going to be playable. One of the better 2-drops in the format, period. Just because 3/3 for 2s are just strong, especially in the synergy decks where you really want those specific traits on turn 1, and then this one's going to put pressure on your opponent. So that's all great news. It's dual aspect, which means in some decks, it's going to be even better because you want the dual aspect. However, I will say it's a 2-drop, which means you probably have to have a deck constructed around these aspects. Like your main aspects probably have to be Command Cunning in order for this to be something you play on turn 1. But here's the kicker of this. It also has this exhaust effect. Now, and actually, it also has the ability to put experience token somewhere else. And normally, this isn't like a huge deal. Like, if you're going to play this on turn 1, it's just going to be a 3/3. Like, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a 3/3. Okay? And then there's going to be like that 1 or 2 times where you're going to give the experience token to a space unit that can end the game. And that's 1 point of extra damage that you needed. Or put an experience token on like a Captain Typho. So now your Sentinel's a 5/6. Or your opponent's got a big attack. And you play this and you just exhaust their unit in the mid game. And that's what makes Jyn Erso so powerful. Is her worst case scenario is a battlefield marine. Her best case scenario is you have that option, but then you also have a game-winning potential play in the mid to late game. That is incredible. I mean, this is one of the strongest cards. It's always awkward to talk about like, oh, here's a 2-drop 3/3 as some of the strongest cards in the format, but they are the strongest cards in the format usually. Like there are some rares and legendaries, of course, but these are the bread and butters of your decks. And this is a critical one, especially with all the rotation units happening. We're going to need more 2-drops like this. Next up, we've got Cinta Kaz, 3-cost ground unit in Vigilance Heroism. She's a 3/5 rebel, and while this unit is upgrade, she gains Sentinel. Pretty straightforward. 3/5 for 3. It's okay. Got the rebel tag. Cool. Being upgraded, getting Sentinel can be relevant, especially in a situation like if we have more cards like Jyn, or even like the Black Sun Kabbalist, where it comes down and you can put experience tokens on things. Well, suddenly this is a 4/5 Sentinel, right? that can be pretty good as well. So there are some options there. You know, there seems to be like that reaffirming strategy of I've got a couple units that can buff up other units, and it's a little bit of a go wide strategy, especially with the spy tokens that we had from the previous set. I think it just kind of fits within that theme. So I could see this being okay in certain strategies with Rebel synergy. Totally reasonable. Next up, we've got Haymaker. This one's interesting. It's a 4-cost event in command, and then it says give an experience token to a friendly unit. That unit deals damage equal to its power to an enemy unit in the same arena. Now, at first glance, you're like, isn't this just a better Strike True? But then if you think about it for a second, Strike True allows you to hit any unit. It doesn't have to be in the same arena. And I will say, the fact that it says same arena, even though you get an experience token, and it is also 1 cost more, I think this is just a worse Strike True in most cases. The 1 extra experience token in some cases will come in useful, where either you get your Sentinel pumped up, or you get a nice attack in, and you kill their units, and it's in the same arena, and that's the one you wanted to hit anyways. So there are situations where I think Haymaker is going to just be better, like straight up, just that's good. And then there are some cases where I think Strike True really came in handy, because Strike True, the thing that Strike True offered was a way into the other arena that you weren't necessarily focusing on if you were playing the unit-based strategy. Otherwise, you have to play into space and ground all the time. And Strike True gave you that versatility. It's not like Strike True was a very commonly played card, but there were a few decks that were running Strike True. And I think in those cases, the versatility of it was the power regarding the event. Doesn't mean Haymaker's bad by any means. I could totally see this being playable, especially since removal seems to be lower. Like, the options for removal seems to be lower. And, if we have like an Anakin Green or like a Yoda Green type of meta where we've got a bunch of heroism command, I could see Haymaker fitting in those styles of decks. Because a lot of the times, getting that experience token, punching something would be huge. Especially if you get like Captain Typho down. Like, I keep mentioning Captain Typho, but he's like by far the most obnoxious Sentinel in the format, at least right now. Making him a 5/6 and punching for 5 is a huge deal. So I could see Haymaker doing some work in those styles of decks as well. Next up, we've got more spoilers. Another 2-cost Rebel, and oh my gosh, we've got full pixels on this. Let's go. 2-cost ground units in Vigilance Heroism. It's a 2/4 Rebel, and on attack, you may give a friendly Rebel unit Sentinel for this phase. This one seems like a totally reasonable turn 1 play. If you are interested in having Rebels on turn 1 and you have that Rebel synergy, I think Bodie has a lot of options in that regard. Giving a Rebel unit Sentinel can be very obnoxious for your opponent. You're giving certain cards Sentinel kind of passing around the aggro between a couple of cards can be very, very annoying. And I think that can give you a little bit of value, but really the key for this card is it's a 2/4 Rebel. That's pretty much what you're getting with Bodie. I don't actually know because I haven't looked at it. But I don't really know how many like turn 1 Rebel units that we're actually going to have with the new set, the new rotation. It's definitely something that is going to be way lower because set 1 was like the Rebel set. But we did get quite a few in like Jump to Light Speed. And we did get quite a few in Secrets of Power, like Nemec, for example, Karis Nemec. But there is a little bit of a shortage for turn 1 plays. I think Bodie would fit in and be an option for sure in those scenarios. Next up, we've got Rogue 1. This one's a 3-cost space unit in Vigilance. It's a 3/3 Rebel vehicle transport. When a friendly unit is defeated, you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put any number on the bottom, and the rest on top in any order. So an interesting one. You kind of get like a Inferno 4 type effect, but it's when any friendly unit is defeated. So it doesn't have to be itself. I will say, I think Inferno 4 is better, like for what it was trying to do, because you get the when played effect and the when defeated effect. So you get it when it comes in and you get it when it goes out. So you immediately get value from it, which is really nice, especially for setting up the following turns. But it's also a 2/3 for 2 in space, which was on rate. A 3/3 for 3 in space is below rate. And you have to have at least one other unit defeated in order for this to get value, the same as Inferno 4. And then if you somehow get another unit defeated, then you could start generating a little bit more value in the Rogue One's case. I'm not a huge fan of this card. A 3/3 for 3, again, I just don't see it being all that valuable. There does seem, especially with like Bodie, for example, a little minor theme of like the Rebels kind of being a little bit more obnoxious and like getting value and kind of stalling out the game a little bit more and doing some of these more what I would consider guerrilla warfare tactics, which kind of fits the Rebel theme. I think the theme of Rebels does make a lot more sense. You know, being like a super aggressive, like just dump everything and like burn your opponent out and destroy them. You know, it was always about calculated strikes, you know, scrounging up whatever value you could from the battlefield and then making these decisive, you know, plays in the lore at least. So I think it just is more fun that way. But there does seem to be like a little bit of a theme pushing towards that direction where, you know, you're passing Sentinels around, you're getting a little bit of value from defeated, or there's going to be another card that we'll talk about in just a moment that, or the leader rather, that reinforces this as well. So not a huge fan, but maybe the Rebels will take a different turn. Maybe it'll take a different turn. Next up, we got From a Certain Point of View, 1-cost event in Colorless. Play a card from your hand, ignoring its aspect penalties. So this one, love the art, by the way. I know some people didn't like the Obi-Wan series as much, and I get it. But there were two moments that were incredible. And the first moment was the Clone Wars flashback, and the second moment was this scene right here. Crazy good. Okay, enough of that. This card, it seems like it would just go into those decks that are looking to ignore aspect penalties. You know, I could see this like maybe you play a 1 or 2 of in like your Hera deck as a failsafe, or maybe you're playing, you know, a deck that doesn't like guarantee that you'll discount the aspect penalties. In Hera's case, or like Gar Saxon's case, like, or not Gar Saxon's case, but Agent Callus's case, like you wouldn't play this in Agent Callus because you can just use the action to play it with, you know, ignoring the aspect penalties. That's fine. You already paid the 1. You don't need an extra card and doing all that other stuff. But this seems like for leaders that maybe we haven't seen yet. That's kind of what I'm getting the feel for this one. Next up, we've got the new rare base, Shipbreaking Yard, 26 HP base. Epic action, discard 3 cards from your deck. You may return a card discarded this way to the top of your deck. So this one's kind of interesting. It kind of reminds me of Thermal Oscillator. And you might be like, well, why does it remind you of Thermal Oscillator? Well, it does something similar in that it shrinks your deck size in order to, you know, get to some sort of combination of cards. That's kind of the goal. The biggest thing about this is it's only 3 cards, so it's not really going to make a huge impact on your overall effectiveness of like shrinking your deck size. I have not done like the overall like numbers on this or anything, of course, because we're just seeing it for the first time. Thermal Oscillator would give you 1 extra HP. It would reduce the deck size by 5. So, you know, you've got sort of that option still, because jump to light speed. But this one, you do get to kind of filter what your draws are, which is kind of nice. You shrink your deck size by 2, kind of, because you're, well, discarding the top 3 cards. If there's some value for returning cards from your discard pile or getting some value from there, that can be interesting. I'm not a huge fan of this right now. However, and here's the big caveat, we did see cards, and I've talked about this a couple times, like from the other day, where if it's discarded from your deck or discarded from your hand, you get some sort of value. If there's enough consistency with this, where when I hit the discard 3, I'm going to get some sort of trigger, maybe this is worthwhile. Like, okay, this epic action is suddenly discard 3 cards from your deck, I put something on top, but then I get to draw because I discarded something that says when this is discarded, you get to draw from the top of your deck or whatever. Maybe there's something there. Maybe. But it has to be something like that, I think, in order to make this interesting. Not a very strong base. Again, you're losing an additional HP off the Thermal Oscillator, for example, but also 4 HP from the main 30 HP bases. So that could be a big hit. That could be a big, big hit. And the other thing that we have to think about is because the format's shrinking, the force cards are going to get a lot better. And force bases are really good because those are the ones that enable the force strategies. So 20 HP bases, the other base, Temple of Destruction for 25 HP in aggression. These are going to be more common considerations because you're not going to have Tarkin Town or ECL or, those types of bases from set 1, or even the set 3 bases like Petronaki Arena or Shadow Collective Camp. Not that you're really playing those, but the pool shrinks. So force bases suddenly become a lot better and compete with the Shipbreaking Yard a lot more. Next up, we've got Common Cause. It's a 2-cost event. Give a unit +1/+1 for this phase for each different aspect among units you control. This one's kind of cool. I mean, it's a 2-cost that, very likely in some of the decks that we're constructing is going to give +5/+5, right? If you have like a Vigilance, Cunning, Heroism unit, this is already +3/+3. If you've got Command, Aggression on the other side, if you've got all 4 aspects on the board plus Heroism, this is a +5/+5. So I can totally see this being anywhere. +3/+3 is very reasonable, right? If you're playing, let's say, a Command deck, because Common Cause is Command, so you're matching that aspect, and you're playing a Command, Aggression, Heroism deck, it's very likely if you have a Command Aggression unit, or something of that note. I don't see why that wouldn't be too uncommon, and so +3/+3 seems very reasonable. +5/+5 is kind of the best case scenario. I don't think in either case it's like that incredibly powerful, but it is cool. These pump effects haven't been all that great. I will say though, this can kind of act as like an attack, or like a surprise strike, because there's going to be less exhausting. Well, in theory, the exhausting cards that we're going to have are going to be less powerful than the options that you're running in the past. There's going to be less often. And then you have like leaders like Leia that really want different aspects across units that you control. So that's something to consider as well. Where, if you're playing like Leia, for example, the new Leia that is, and you're giving someone +1/+1 for each different aspect, and then you do Common Cause, you could potentially get up to like +8/+8 on a single unit, which is kind of nasty. It's kind of nasty. And then of course you can just give this to Leia herself, and she has Overwhelm, I think. She shuts out a low power, but you potentially could do some cool things with that. It's a very interesting card, especially with all the unique dual aspect cards that we've got running around. Next up, we've got Black Sun Patroller, 2-cost space unit in Cunning Villainy. It's a 2/2 shielded space unit. This looks incredible. I mean, this looks incredible. So all the 3/2s that people got running around, like the N1 Starfighter, or like if we have more Kylo Ren Starfighters or whatever it is, this just kills them and survives, which is incredible. But the most important part about this is the 2/2 shielded unit. So you get to attack into base and not lose it immediately in most games. It's very similar to how Crafty Smuggler and Secret of Sage were good. It's just a 2 resource play, so you can play it on turn 1. Yes, it's a 2/2, but it's going to peck in for some damage. It's got shielded, so you're going to guarantee yourself a little bit of damage in most games, and that's good enough. This looks like one of the better turn 1 plays in the game from the new sets. Similar to Jyn, if you're a 2 resource play, there's not a lot for it to be very good. And this is the first space version that we've seen of this type of effect. We've seen some space, units on 2 resources that can get a shield token if another, clause is met, but none that are just given a shield token when it enters. It's also an Underworld card, which we have seen has been a little bit more applicable these days. So this one looks great. Absolutely incredible. Next up, we've got Massassi Group Marines. 3-cost ground unit in Command Heroism. It's a 4/4 Rebel Trooper. I can see this being played, especially with the Rebel, group getting dwindled down. It's very similar to your, oh my gosh, the First Order card. I forget the name of it, but the 4/4 for 3 Command Villainy, that Knights of Ren. Yeah, that card that gives you the 4/4 First Order. It's one of those cards where, like, if you are needing that curve filled and you want a little bit of more of aggressive stat line, a 3-resource 4/4 is good. It's typically above the curve. Like, I'd rather have a 4/4 in a lot of cases, because it can kill like 2 4s. Now, 3/5s can be better in some cases, so it's a really toss-up between 3/5 and a 4/4, but a 4/4 is a good stat line. It's definitely more aggressive, so if you're looking for that, that can be useful. I can totally see this being played in the Rebel-style decks, depending on what Rebels we have to choose from the new set. Next up, we've got the Tree Remembers. This one's a 4-cost event in Vigilance. An enemy unit loses all abilities for this phase. If it costs 3 or less, you defeat it. So, a pretty interesting removal option. The first thing I'll think of is this is our new 4-cost removal. And it doesn't kill much. So if you think about like this compared to Takedown or Fell the Dragon, which are the direct comparisons because they're all 4-cost Vigilance events, and they are all kind of more controlling options. And the other two are rotating out, Takedown and Fell the Dragon. This one is just significantly weaker. So many less options. You're limited to that 3 or cost less to defeat it. It does make it so that you can cause an enemy unit to, well, lose all their abilities, which can be nice. For example, if they decide to reprint Super Laser Technician, suddenly this is a 4-cost event that defeats their resource. Think about that for a second. Now that's good. So that can be really nice. So there are situations where the Tree Remembers can be devastatingly good. But I think on average, it's going to be pretty mediocre to bad. I can definitely see this as a sideboard option. I can even see it as a main deck option, depending on what, units have abilities that we need to turn off. Slash, if there are 3 drops or less that have some sort of when defeated trigger that you can turn off. I mean, that is where this becomes truly, truly powerful. I'm thinking of like cards like Cobb Vanth, for example, that if they were played more, like Anakin Green is using Cobb Vanth all the time these days, and those types of units, if you're able to kill that unit, that basically kills like the 3/2 plus like whatever other 3-drop that they're getting. And that can be pretty strong. There was one other thing about the card, and this, I don't know how impactful this will be. It really depends on how popular pilot leaders are, but it is just enemy unit, right? And it doesn't say non-leader. So if, let's say Luke pilots onto like their red 5, you can defeat red 5 and take Luke with it, which, okay, maybe there's something there. Or if like, we've got like Vader plopping down on like his 3-drop, or Kazuda popping down on the Millennium Falcon. This thing does deal with those. So maybe that's why this was printed, because of the landscape of the format. Don't know. In a vacuum, worse. In specific scenarios, potentially much better. And I think that is a reasonably designed removal option. So, not bad. But next up, we've got a brand new leader in Jyn Erso. So another Jyn Erso. We've got a Vigilance Heroism version this time. She's got an action to pay 1 resource. If a friendly rebel unit was defeated this phase, search the top 3 cards of your deck for a card and draw it. So I mentioned earlier about how like, oh, well, we've got Rogue One, we've got, Bodie, we've got these cards that are looking to get a little bit more value. Well, this is also that kind of similar strategy. You want your units to kind of be defeated or get a little bit of value, then be defeated. You draw a card because of it. Seems reasonable. The flip side is 5 resource for a 3/6. I will just side note here. There is an overwhelming 5 resource 3/6 amount of leaders, and that's a huge downside. It's a huge downside. There are not a whole lot of 5 resource 3/6 leaders that are actually playable. 3/7s, common. 4/6s, common. 3/6s, Han 2 was like the only common one because his ability was so powerful. So the leader deploy didn't matter nearly as much. Now, 3/6 and 4/6 isn't a crazy difference, but there is a significant difference to it. So we'll see. Because there's a lot of leaders rotating out, maybe the 3/6 doesn't matter as much, but I was just, every single time I see a 3/6, I'm like, ooh, So on attack, you have the same trigger. If a friendly rebel uses defeat this phase, you search the top 3 cards of your deck and you draw it. This looks interesting. Immediately, I think of Jyn Erso Aggression. You have like a lot of cards that, you play like the other card that we saw the other day. I forget the name. The Feign or whatever, Chio Feign, that draws each of you a card. You draw a little bit of cards that way. You've got a couple rebel units that are coming down, and then you are letting them die or getting some value out of them. They're dying. Maybe you play like Valiant Commando from the previous set where, you attack, deal a little bit of damage, it dies, you get to draw some more cards, and then you deploy Jyn, maybe a Sudden Ferocity on her, and then, on the later turns, you just kill with Aggressive Negotiations. That's kind of the dream game plan, right? I mean, obviously, you're not going to have aggressive negotiations every single game. So we kind of need something that reaffirms this type of strategy. We're getting a little bit of value every single turn is actually what you want to be doing. But we're seeing like Cinta Kaz that's going to come down, maybe get a Sentinel body for us. Bodie is going to come down and pass around some Sentinel options. We've got the Rogue One that might be able to pass around some value because people are dying or our units are dying. The new Jyn Erso leader and the units do not have the same aspects. You can't play them in the same deck. Generally speaking, at least based on what we're seeing here. Now, you could play one of the other bases from the new set. It's not that great. I think, what is this? Yeah, it's an epic actions. And it's an epic action that only allows you to ignore one of its aspects. So, I mean, and that's a vigilance base. So you would be playing double vigilance? No, that doesn't even work. So yeah, we would need to find some sort of other option to be able to play multi-aspects. So you're looking at some sort of vigilance command strategy most likely, and I'm just not terribly convinced. I'm excited to play around with it. I've mentioned this many times, but Aggressive Negotiations is one of my favorite cards to play. I've got quite a few favorite cards, okay? And I just build decks around them, and that's just kind of what's for fun, right? And when you get to like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 cards or whatever, and you smack the Aggressive Negotiations in for like 16 on a single attack, it's devastating. It is very, very strong. The problem is actually finding Aggressive Negotiations. Now, fortunately, if you are building Jyn right, you will be able to dig a lot through your deck, and you will probably be able to find Aggressive Negotiations in most games. It's very similar to like a Cassian, right? Like Cassian from set 1. I played a Cassian deck where, we drew a card every single turn, and then you have just a million different cards when you deploy. And that can be very scary. So there is some potential with Jyn. Not going to write her off yet. Maybe there's a little bit more value associated with this. Maybe you can play a little bit more of a controlling style with the Rebel units. Get a little bit of value. It's like a mid-range game plan, just generating value as you go along. But I'll say these types of effects aren't terribly exciting unless they're very hard control, right? Like a Chancellor Palpatine, for example. Even that one, like from the previous set, it's decent, but it's not like an exceptional control deck or anything like that. It's just above average is where it ends up. You do get to draw a little bit of cards. You do get to use those value pieces, and then you do get to cheapen your later game plays. And this doesn't have that same setup. And it's also heroism, and it also just purely draws you cards. And you have to have your units die, so you have to play units in order to enable it. It's tough. If this said if any unit was defeated, interesting. Very interesting. But this is just your friendly units. You have to play units that want to die. I don't know. Not as convinced, but it does look pretty exciting. But that is all the spoilers. That was a very much longer video than normal because we got a ton of them. Double Cross, the new choose sides, essentially. Black Sun Cabalist. We've got a little bit of go wide strategy. We've got Haymaker, the new strike true. Some rebel units like Cinta, Kaz, Jyn. New clear the field. I will say Jyn is definitely by far the most exciting one of these groupings. Although Bodie isn't too bad. And also Black Sun Patroller. The 2-drops. Like I always say, the 2-drops are the key exciting ones. And also, what do you think about Shipbreaking Yard? Is there anything that I'm not thinking about related to this? I'm very, very interested. I think this is one of those things where when we see more of the set, we'll have a more set in stone kind of, this is what it's going to be, and that's going to be incredible. So, yeah. The Black Sun Patroller, though, is gross. That, Jyn Erso, those are going to be good, no matter what. I mean, Vader Yellow, guys, still in the game, still going to be able to play Black Sun Patroller. I mean, good stuff. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.